Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Strength Dojo podcast. I am your host, Horatio. Today we'll be talking about one topic instead of three. What school sports pair well with martial art training? For this topic, I'll mainly be talking about American sports. After all, I am not well educated on Norwegian sports, Scandinavian, Australian, and so on. In America, we have 3 sports seasons, starting in autumn, winter, and finally spring. But before I list the sports, I should mention the criteria at which I'm looking at. So we have cardio, hand-eye coordination, situational awareness, muscle endurance, spatial awareness, kinesthetic awareness, and explosiveness. Next, the disqualifying criteria, such as critical interference with martial arts, social obsession with certain sports, parental obsession with particular sports, too high chance of injury, or sports that is more about building specific technique rather than generalized fitness. So starting off in the beginning of the school year, we have soccer and volleyball. Now you might be surprised I don't have football on the list. After all, it teaches aggression, explosiveness, situational awareness, and other many useful skills. But I will get to that later. Soccer will probably one of the best sports listed here for cardio. It's not great for hand-eye coordination, but it is good for foot and eye coordination, especially dribbling the football, passing, using the footballer skills to get past defenders, etc. Has decent situational awareness, especially as a defender or someone attacking, especially because defenders come in and good ones might even come from your blind side. So you just want to really be able to see who you can pass to, who's blocked, and who's about to intercept you. It's not the best for core strength, upper body strength, explosiveness, not as utilized. However, many people say that legs and lungs are the most important aspects of a martial artist to train if you're going to compete anyway. It has a decent amount of kinesthetic awareness, but not too much, since again, mainly using your legs. Volleyball is great because you're doing squats all day and it's super high level of hand-eye coordination. Not as great as cardio, since for the most part you're standing in a small area, you're not going to be running much. However, all that jumping, the constant squatting, diving, it makes for really good dynamic cardio and explosiveness. It's great explosiveness, as I mentioned, with the intercepting the ball. Good situational awareness, because you need to see if your team's going to cover, are they not going to cover. As soon as someone spikes it, you have to, cover your spiker or to defend against an opponent spiker. It's great for the muscle endurance because, again, you are just doing all the squats. I am surprised a lot of those high school and college ladies do not have massive knee problems. And that pretty much wraps up the autumn season. There's not too much there to compete with, so those two just really top out. Coming up next, winter. And as you imagine, wrestling wins. It is by far, hands down, the best choice for your additional martial art training, since it is a martial art. Not only that, but it is physically the hardest sport in American high school, if not globally. It has high levels of cardio, explosiveness, hand-eye coordination, endurance, spatial awareness, and kinesthetic awareness, which is actually something volleyball had that I didn't really mention, is the kinesthetic awareness. And best of all, every skill you learn in wrestling is a skill that builds up your martial art repertoire. So, needless to say, in the winter season, if you're American and you have access to wrestling at your school, take that up. If for whatever reason you can't do wrestling, second best choice I'd say is basketball. It has high levels of running, cardio, sprinting, pretty similar to soccer, but not as grueling. It has higher levels of hand-eye coordination than several of the sports. It has really good situational awareness with 5-on-5 on a team and usually pretty quick-paced action. The endurance is not as great, and it is a great sport that carries over incredibly well for martial art training. And with winter, it's really just like autumn, pretty much down to those two. Now, spring, this is where things get more interesting and more complicated. For many, spring will be the swim season and track season. Some, swim might be winter. So I'm going to cover that real quick just in case. Good segue. Definitely keep wrestling your number one choice, but as for basketball versus swimming, that is really hard. I would say probably whatever you enjoy more and will really dedicate yourself to training hard in. Swimming trains your cardio, your muscle endurance, your stamina really well. However, it doesn't really have the hand-eye coordination or situational awareness that basketball does. So there are pros and cons to it. So getting back to spring, swim is good, track is probably even better. However, there are many events in track and field. And I mentioned just track for a reason. Field, unfortunately, falls under much of the disqualifying criteria, which is the specific one is it's more about building specific techniques as opposed to generalized fitness. Take discus, shot put, javelin, and any of the others. It's just really specialized in really maximizing your technique for the highly technical event. Then there's other things like high jump or pole vault, which again, not going to be on the list for the same reasons. So when I say track, I mainly am saying the sprints, the hurdles, the relay, short to medium distance runs, so basically less than 5K, long jump, and finally the hept or decathlon. The heptathlon or decathlon, definitely my top choice for the spring season because it really trains you over a multitude of different sports. So you don't have to worry about over specialization. There's 7 to 10 events. So you can't just focus on one event's technique. You have to focus on 7 to 10. And that's the big difference right there. So you can focus on your explosiveness, your technique, your hand-eye coordination, your spatial awareness, your cardio, because in the athlons, you're running, you're sprinting, I believe there's hurdles. So it really trains almost everything. The only thing it's kind of lacking in is situational awareness, because it's pretty much just you against yourself. You don't have to worry about the positioning of the opponents around you. After the athlons, I would say probably the hurdles and then the sprints would be the next best choice. Because good leg, explosiveness, and strength is really important in martial arts. After all, we have to be springy and explosive. And so that's pretty much it, excuse me, for the main American sports. I do have several honorable mentions that are definitely good choices as well. I'm not sure what seasons they're in, so I'm just going to kind of lump them all together, and I'm not going to compare them to the main ones I just listed, but they're definitely good choices. Lacrosse, rugby, gymnastics, and dance. So lacrosse has a lot of the pros that wrestling, soccer, a little bit of football, and basketball has. It has the hand-eye coordination, spatial awareness, situational awareness, endurance. And in America, at least, it's not popular, so unlike football, you don't have the obsessive parents or the obsessive culture around it, which you might ask, why did I include basketball? There are many Midwest towns that, their Friday night is going to the local high school to watch the high school kids play basketball. Yeah, in that case, I would definitely say choose wrestling or one of the honorable mentions that fall into that season. Rugby, definitely a good choice, again, if it's not a cultural obsession, which in America, it definitely isn't. But it has even more pros and less cons than football. Way less cons, even more pros. I'd say of everything, it's probably second place. Wrestling beating everything, of course. Gymnastics, definitely a very solid third place. I said I wasn't going to compare them, and I immediately do. But gymnastics, it focuses on something I didn't really mention before, which is flexibility, along with dance. So gymnastics has that explosiveness, the insane upper body muscle strength, the high levels of kinesthetic awareness. So if you can, gymnastics is a great, fantastic choice. The only downside to gymnastics is, especially men's gymnastic, it's very heavy core and upper body, so your legs will suffer. So definitely just stick to that for one season and do something very leg heavy for your other seasons. And finally, as I mentioned, dance. Sometimes it's explosive, most times not really. Unfortunately, it pretty much ignores most upper body. Not the best core, but it does have good coordination, has good flexibility, and if you're doing dancing with people, with a partner to be specific, that carries over incredibly well with martial arts because you're keeping pace with your partner, really learning distancing with them, which a lot of people lack, is understanding the distance of what it takes to, say, grab someone, to touch someone, to be out of touch range, how quickly you can close those ranges. Dancing is one of the best for that. And now, finally, to finish this off, the highly controversial opinion I have that football should definitely not be on the list of sports you train. The main reason for this is it hits every single disqualifying criteria I have, and that is pretty bad. So, one, the social obsession with certain sports. Football is so obsessed over in America that even the military, when you're serving overseas, many bases will have a holiday for the Super Bowl and you have off. The military. That's crazy. They work every other major holiday, but football? Nope. Hey, special day. Let's take off. Now, not every single base, not every single ship or unit does that, but I have seen it personally. It was crazy. Next is the parental obsession with football, especially fathers. They will, generally speaking, kind of project themselves onto you and you wanting to do good to play football. So if you showed no interest in it before, then suddenly do it to improve your martial arts, they're going to be like, no, son, you started football. Screw martial arts, screw everything else. You need to put 1,000% into football. Ah. And they're just going to take it, again, generally speaking, to an extreme. Now, there's many fathers who'd be like, hey, you, do whatever. But especially in the Midwest, oh man, it is a toxic level of fandom, obsession over it. So if you suddenly try to do football, it's really going to be a major part of your life a lot of times, whether you want it to or not. And if you want it to, hey, power to you, stick to your football, have fun with it. But just watch out for the next disqualifying criteria I'm about to mention, which is high chance of injury, whether short-term or long-term. There's a lot of head impacts and a lot of repeated head injuries. A lot more so than even rugby, martial arts, and anything else. And those repeated head injuries can lead to serious issues that can ultimately cause brain damage that leads to a change in personality and has been noted to even cause such a change to cause suicide. And if I remember, I will try to link some of the groups and studies that talk about that. Actually, I guess there is one disqualifying criteria it does not meet, which is more about specific technique. Luckily, unless you are a quarterback, you don't have to worry about ignoring all the physicality and just practicing this or that technique again and again and again and again. But everything else, especially the injury, is just, and the obsession's just totally not worth it for me. And I don't think it would be worth it for you, unless you just really want to play football. So that's it. Those are the sports that I think would be best to continue and improve your martial art fitness in high school and possibly college. Thank you, and this has been Horatio with the Strength Podcast. Hey guys, quick post edit I'm going to do. So in my anti-football talk, I was talking about fathers, and in the edit, I noticed it really sounded like I was projecting my own father onto me. I never played football. I don't even know if my father played football. He was way too sick when I was young to even have that kind of toxic mentality and all that towards me. Yeah, really the only place I really took after him was judo, and he pushed me in martial arts in the beginning, which is weird because I had to talk him into it to start. And then once I start, he's like, all right, let's do it. But that was fine. I enjoyed it. I mean, I've been doing it 30 freaking years, so clearly there's some passion there. So I just wanted to clear it up. I was not projecting my own father being that way, but I've seen it a lot of times, and I have heard so many stories of other fathers just pushing their sons like crazy. So anyway, have a great evening, afternoon, weekend.